everybody. Welcome to the Ordinary Black Professionals. I'm Nicole,
And I'm Stefan.
and this week we're talking about speaking up for yourself and advocating for yourself in the workplace.
So the question is, Nicole, were you silent or were you silenced?
Definitely the latter. Thought we'd play a bit of homage to the Queen of Oprah and
Mhm.
her legendary question that she asked Meghan Markle last week.
Yeah, so I think the topic of speaking up for yourself and being silent or silenced in the workplace is relevant for this week. So let's jump straight into that.
Let's jump straight in.
So the first talking point that we've got is don't let people take credit for your work.
Has this happened to you before?
Oh, I mean,
When has it not happened?
when has it not happened? Yeah. I did this piece of work. It took me 2 weeks to do this piece of work, and I wrote this long ass report. And a manager comes along, and I give them the report to manager. I say, add your parts to the start, add your sections in there, and then we'll send it to the customer. And what he does is take the report, put his name at the top, and submit it to the customer. My name is nowhere to be seen. He doesn't even add any of his own sections in there. It's just all my writing in there. So I cross-check it against what I wrote and what's in there, and I'm like,
So you're doing
wow.
so you're doing a control find Virgin
Yeah,
history, trying to work out what
exactly.
the differences are. You've
And
got it up on two screens.
he doesn't even proofread it. He just literally put his name at the top. I'm like, whoa. Nah, 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 nah. I kicked up a fuss. I actually drafted this long email that I was going to send directly to him, cussing him out for doing that. And then my direct manager said to me, whatever you do, do not send that email. We'll take care of this internally and blah 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 blah. And
Kind of like the firm.
I mean,
What the firm has said.
exactly. And you know what the funny
like
thing
the
is?
firm statement. We'll take care of this internally, private, behind closed doors.
And you know what the funny thing is? I thought he was protecting me, right? But I heard nothing back ever. Like I don't even know if that guy was disciplined for what he did till this day.
But don't you think that happens quite often? That
No, it does.
that your voice is silenced
Mm,
and another's kind of is advocated because they're more senior than you, they've got more influence, whatever it is.
yeah.
And also different types of organizations will do that because when they're presenting a deck or something, it's just the senior person and the client because that's just how it is.
Mm, yeah, yeah. In that moment, I felt like I was silenced.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I never told the guy that I knew that he did that. I never got any feedback to hear that he was told off for it or anything,
Yeah.
or even the customer knew that that was my report.
Mm.
But yeah, till this day, I don't even know. I just had to let it go.
Yeah.
So I've got another example as well. A friend
But
told
then
me,
just talking about the letting it go,
yeah,
I'm just since we're going to be pulling in different cultural references in this episode,
mm,
I'm just thinking about what Michelle Obama says. When
when
they
they
go
go high,
low.
oh, they go low.
Let's get it right now.
Can you say it?
When they go low, we go high.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll try my best, Michelle. I'll try my best. I'll try my best. Yeah, so I've got a friend who he did the same kind of thing. He worked for like 2 weeks or so on his report. His report was about robotic process automation. And he did all the work on the report. It was detailed information about like best ways to do robotic process automation. And at the end of it, they said, right, the only name, because this report was going to be published like publicly to other companies and as the face of the company, right? And at the end of the report, they said that, okay, the only name that goes on this report is the director's name. But the director doesn't know anything about robotic process automation. He didn't write this report, not a single word of it, and it's got nothing to do with it. But his name goes on the report. And my friend said he had to fight to get his name in like small print just at the bottom of the report. Director's name big at the top, his name small, small, small print.
Interesting.
And I was like, wow, okay. These are situations of people taking credit for your work.
Yeah.
But I feel like in my situation, I'm not sure what much different I could have done to avoid that
Well,
happening.
that's what I was gonna say. What can people do to stop that? And to be honest with you, I don't even know. I think it is just
I
what
think
it
it's part
is.
of the business, isn't it? But if there is the opportunity for you to avoid it, then do attempt to avoid it. Like, um,
Stand up for yourself.
stand up for yourself. Yeah, yeah.
I think that's gonna be a common theme of this episode.
Stand up for yourself. And that's what my friend did. He stood up for himself. He said, I wrote this whole report and my name's
Mm,
nowhere to be seen. And he stood up for himself. He's got his name in small print. It's on there, at least. So if he wanted to go to an employer and say, look, I've done this work, published a public report on this, you can see it right there. His name's on it.
yeah.
So at least he's got some recognition. And that is a little bit of crumbs that will help for your CV, you know, a little bit of extras.
Yeah.
If your name's
Agreed.
nowhere on it, then you can't claim it.
Yeah. Agreed. Agree.
All right. Next one, take charge of your career direction before your manager does it for you. I like this one because sometimes when you come in like new, fresh into the business, your career direction can take the direction of whatever the team is doing at the time or whatever
Mm,
the manager is doing, right? And if you don't push for exactly what you want to achieve in your career, your manager will just take you down the the lane of whatever work that they're attempting to achieve,
mm,
right? Even if that is boring work, work that doesn't align with your skills, work that doesn't align with your interests, it will align with the project goals,
mm.
and that's what you're going to learn, and that's what you're going to get experience in. And at the end of the day, when you've done all that work and you've achieved the project goals, what do you have to show? You've got itty bitty pieces of work on your CV. None of it links together. There's no cohesive understanding, no cohesive story.
Well, it's funny you to say that because as you're saying that right now, I'm just thinking of something that a friend said to me quite recently, and it's to be really selfish with your career,
Mm,
to make sure that you are not silenced, and that if you choose not to speak up, it's because you've intentionally kept silent. Do you know
mm,
what I mean? And I think by doing that, by able to distinguish differences, you are either selfish with your career and you make intentional decisions and you don't get swept up by the wind by whatever manager or project that you're in at the time, and you actually, I don't know, think about the bigger picture of your career, which is easier said than done, but it will help to create a stronger CV so it's not just bitty
yeah,
across lots of different random stuff. And also to think about, like, will somebody want me outside of this particular company?
that's true. Are your skills cohesive enough for you to be able to put it together and say, right, on my CV, I've got all this. I can apply to X
Exactly.
job.
And if for example, like, you're currently in a company and you're getting paid, let's say 50K, if you were to leave, can you demand the same salary, if not more, when you left?
Mm,
Like, are your skills actually wanted on the market?
mm,
Because what you don't want is that you're building up all these skills that this company that you work for really values, but that's about it. No one else values it on the market. And now you find yourself in a position with these dead skills and you're stuck.
mm.
Like, no one wants to be stuck. You always want to have some kind of option.
That's true. I think I mentioned on one of our recent episodes about contracting
Yeah.
that I was in this company, and one of the reasons I decided to leave was also because the skills and the things that they were doing were just not going to align with my future vision of what I wanted to do.
Mm,
They were working on really old school technologies, and it just didn't align with the market. So if I tried to leave, the market would have moved on, and I wouldn't be ready for it.
yeah.
So I needed to move into a position where I was going to be ready for that. So yeah, so I left that one and went somewhere else where that was the case. Um, I think another time as well, because I think this is a good example of not being silent um, is when I was very early on in my career and I was doing work and I was trying to, when you're trying to, you're very early and you're trying to figure out what you actually want to do.
Yeah.
You don't know, you come out of uni, you're working on all this stuff, and then you're just trying to keep your eyes and ears open to see where is my career, what direction is my career actually going to take. And I felt like I wasn't 100% sure, but I felt like I figured it out at that point in time. And just because of the type of work I was doing, I sent an email to my manager and my career coach, and I told them, look, I know I'm working on this stuff right now, but this is the kind of direction I see my career in going. And I see these skills, these technologies over here are the ways that I'm going to achieve that. So this is the stuff that I want to be working on. And I listed out lots of stuff, right? And I said, I want to be working on projects that are doing these things.
Mm,
I sent them a long email explaining that.
mm.
And that was me attempting to take charge of my career direction. The funny thing is, I never got a response from them, but they did acknowledge it, I guess privately, because I think what it was is that I was working on certain projects at the time and they didn't really align with that email. So they didn't want to rock the boat and say, oh, yeah, I guess you're not working on that, but we can't really pull you off this project now.
Mm.
But later on down the line, I did end up doing that because my email was saying, I want to work in DevOps. And now today I work in DevOps. So I had that sort of career direction. I did not let my manager set it for me. I just tried to push it that way. So yeah, take charge. Don't be silent.
So you sent that email over to your managers. It just makes me think if there's more that you could have been done. Because sometimes you've got those people who make the most noise, make the most stink, and they seem like most of the decisions go in their way.
Hmm.
I'm wondering, is there more you could have done to make more of a noise, more of a fuss,
Yeah,
to get a decision made quicker, to go
that
in
is
your
a good
favor?
point. That is a good point. I've had people in my career and they think they've seen a greener grass on the other side of the fence,
Mm,
and they're like, I want to go and do that. And so in order to do that, instead of like waiting your time and, you know, letting the work that you're doing complete and moving on to the next thing, they kick up the most
the
fuss.
most fuss.
The most. I've been shocked by the amount of fuss
But
I've
you
seen
know
people
what? And I
kick up.
think we all know, like, all of our listeners know somebody who will complain, 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 kick up the most fuss, get senior management involved, do the absolute most.
Mm.
But I tell you what, guess what?
They make the decisions go their way, don't they?
They make the decisions go their way. And it's those of us who sit back and go, oh, we'll accommodate, or oh, it's not really what we want, but we'll make it work for the next few months. It's those people who get screwed.
Mm.
My hands up, because I'm one of those people. But the ones who complain, they just get it. Like, I've seen it so many times. I saw it so much last year, with people who would kind of put up, like, complain about certain things, like really, like, I don't know whether they exaggerate it. I think they truly believe in their mind that it's like the worst thing ever, but they'll just describe it in a way that, like, I need to be out of this situation, or I need additional help, or whatever it is, and they get it
Mm.
because they are so persistent with it. That's the word, persistent.
Mm.
And so there's no way somebody like that will ever be silenced, because they'll just keep going, going,
They'll
going,
just
going,
keep
going,
like a
going, 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 going.
dog, just barking,
Yeah.
barking. But the thing is, sometimes I think they get decisions go their way because people want them to just go away.
Shut up.
Just go away,
Yeah.
shut up, go over there then.
Yeah.
And then I feel like that ruins your
Well, I
reputation.
was gonna say, maybe sometimes it burns bridges.
I think so. Okay, I think it burns bridges, right? But at the same time,
Does it matter?
my experience is that these people have got on just fine afterwards.
But that's my experience too.
So,
I mean, it's coming back to being selfish, isn't it?
mm,
Advocating for yourself, and also it's kind of like more. So what if you burn bridges? It's other companies. Do you know what I mean? Like,
mm,
I think that's how some of those people think, and I think some of those people are like, my happiness is really, really important. I'm not saying like my happiness isn't, but I think for them, they need to be happy all the time. The happiness is really, really important.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't want to go a month doing something I don't like because I need to be happy all the time at work. Do you know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
can't
And I
put it
and,
into perspective.
and I
Whereas
and
for
I
me, I'm like, there's going to be projects that I do and don't like. If I'm on a project I don't like, that's just consulting. It's just a bit of an ebb. And if that project lasts 6 months and that's just how it is, like that's my attitude, maybe that's not the right one to have.
but I wonder what happiness means to them, because sometimes I feel like people, especially in the consulting world, when we're doing project work for different customers, right? You can do project work as well, not in the consulting world, but sometimes there's a rough patch.
Mm,
Even if you're on the same project, it could be fun, 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 and then there's a rough patch. There's
mm.
always hard patches, and sometimes these same people, they as soon as the rough patch comes, they're jumping out.
But then this is the
I'm
thing.
not happy.
But it depends on how long the rough patch is. Like some of these people, they want the rough patch to be for a month. And then it depends on how rough is it really. Do you know
Mm,
what I mean? Are we talking like sandpaper rough?
mm.
Or are we talking like, I don't know, another type of rough? I can't think of another type of rough. Some next
Pebble
type of
dashing rough.
pebble dashing rough, yeah. And they can take the pebble dashing rough, but they can't take the sandpaper rough. But I feel like people like me and you can take it both because our skins are thick.
Okay.
Our skins are thick and, you know, um, rough as well.
I mean, mine's, moisturized and smooth, but okay.
So I feel like it's different people can tolerate different things. And also
Yes,
and
but
also for me, I feel like I was brought up to like not to not complain, but I just feel like I just find complaining really annoying. If you're complaining, you're not
mm,
bringing solutions. Like you're just wasting your energy a lot of the time. And I just from in a work environment, I just find it really like annoying and counterproductive.
mhm,
But for those people, they're happy to just keep on barking the same or singing the same tune.
yeah, I don't know, and I do feel like sometimes it destroys their reputation. Um, at least with me, sometimes I'll be thinking like, what is this? I
Mm.
feel like the rough parts on these projects is where you learn the most. For me, that's always when I have learnt the most, I've excelled the most, because I dig in and we're in it to complete
But not
this.
everyone wants to live that struggle life.
It's not struggle life.
Is
It's
it not
every
struggle
project. It's
life?
not. It's project work. That's what it is.
Yeah, but when you're going for that rough patch, it's a struggle life. But it's a struggle. It's not
It's
easy.
real projects. It's real projects. It's not struggle life. If the project started off hard, continues hard, finishes hard, then it's struggle life because it shouldn't have been that hard. No project should be that hard. But if there's a patch where it's hard, then you should expect a patch, I think.
Ride through the patch.
Yeah,
But do you not think if you don't ask, you don't get?
yeah. If you don't ask, you don't get. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and these people definitely ask and they definitely get. But if you don't ask, you don't get. Yeah, but that stretches out to lots of other stuff as too, right? So like pay rises, and I think we've talked about that before on episodes and stuff like that.
Briefly, but I don't think we've done. Maybe that's one to have for the future, an episode on how you negotiate your pay and ask for
Mm.
pay rises.
And training as well. I think that's an important one, If you don't ask, you don't get with training because um I don't know, but for my career and type of skills, you want to always keep learning and receive training from your
Mm,
employer on these different technologies, on the different things that you're working on. You want to be trained properly on what you've been asked to do, so you're doing it right. You're doing it to a good level of quality. So yeah, ask for training for sure. And in the type of work that I do, also ask for training that leads to certifications. Because certifications, that's what's going to help your career.
mm. And ones that are industry recognized.
Industry
There's
recognized
no point
certifications.
doing
Yeah. The company
there's
made up
there's
certification.
company made up
Yeah.
certifications, there's company made up training, and don't get and some of them are good. Like my company has loads of them as well,
Mm.
but on a CV, it's a so what? Who cares?
Yeah. When you apply for a job and you say, oh yeah, I've got this
Internal customer experience training. Okay.
or certification, I'm qualified in it according to the company,
So
that
what?
means
Who
absolutely
cares?
nothing to them.
Especially if the company's small. If you're a Deloitte, EY, PwC, yeah, maybe that might hold some weight.
I'm not
Maybe.
sure.
Maybe
If
if it's coming
it has
from
to be
Deloitte, coming from a
globally
big four,
recognized. It's got to be like a globally or country recognized certification, not
yeah,
some company thing.
like a BCS or like
Yeah.
what's the other one? Like the Scrum Alliance ones. Yeah, it's industry recognized.
Mm,
But the other stuff, it's just I don't know what that is. It's to bring up everybody in the company up to a certain level, I guess, which ultimately helps the company, but not yourself personally.
mm,
Yeah, there's definitely weight in that industry recognized qualifications.
yeah. So don't be silent about that. Ask for what you want. Yeah.
Mm,
Qualifications, certifications, pay rises, what else? All sorts of stuff. Ask
yeah.
for what you want. Um, I've got another one here. Another point is volunteering. Did you volunteer or were you voluntold? Hmm?
Mm,
I mean, you know when your boss puts you up for work and just says, "Oh yeah, you volunteered."
mm,
You didn't volunteer for that.
you're
You
voluntold.
were voluntold. Is that what you want to do?
Is that what you want to do?
Has that got any relevance to your career? Does that have any relevance to the day job that you signed a contract for?
Mm.
You know when you do like
Or when,
side jobs, like, oh, can you set up an event for us so we can all have dinner on a Thursday, oh, can you set up the Christmas party for us? Yeah, thanks.
oh, do you know
I
what?
don't want to do that.
You'd be really good because you're so good at finding those different, like, unique restaurants. You'd be really good if you were our social coordinator and you did that on a monthly basis. I'm not really too sure. Is that really but you'd be really, really good though. I really think you'd be great for it.
Mm,
And then you're like, I'm in a position where it's hard for me to say no. Something happened the other day at work, not with my client actually. They were telling me how their manager had voluntold them do this particular activity and they got a ping. In fact, they got an email to say that in the morning that they were going to do this. And then shortly after the email got a ping to say, thank you so much for volunteering yourself to do it.
what?
And he was like, I didn't volunteer myself to do it. You said on a team meeting
Mm.
with other senior people that I was going to do this without
Oh,
asking me,
when they
without,
drop it in front of the senior people, and
yeah.
then you're like, oh no, now I can't. Now I can't.
Now I can't get out of it
So get
because
out
my
of it.
manager just committed us, and I'm sure many, many, many people on the listening right now will know this. Your manager has just committed you personally or the team to get something done by a particular deadline, and now you're all busting the gut to get it done.
Mm,
You're working like donkeys to get it done.
mm, mm,
Did you volunteer or were you voluntold?
Well, in that case, voluntold, but was that person silenced or were they silenced?
Silenced.
You think so?
Yeah, definitely. Because because I've been in those positions when managers or whoever has done that to me, and it literally feels like you've got no voice because you can kind of speak up and be like, "Why did you do that?" Blah blah.
Mm,
But at the time, it doesn't matter because the deadline's already been set. So you can cuss and complain and argue as much as you like, but it has to be done in a week's time.
mm,
Firstly, and secondly, if you don't have it done in a week's time, who does that look bad on? It looks
mm,
bad on your manager, and you may feel bad for them, but it looks bad for the team, you personally, and the team because it's like, well, why couldn't you do it to the deadline?
mm,
So it just never ends well. So you always end up having to do it. I hate managers who do that. They're the absolute worst. They're not good managers, people who do that. I never
mm,
do that when I'm managing a team.
mm.
It's
Even
unfair.
my manager now, even though he knows he's going to put me in for a job, he still calls me and asks me,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's nice that he calls and asks me, but when we talk about volunteering for something, I'm more thinking about work items that are not to do with your direct responsibilities.
Oh, okay.
Um, but he calls me and asks me even when it's like to do a project job, which I'm
But
employed to do.
do you not think that your manager should ask you that because they understand what all your priorities are, and then also to not setting unrealistic deadlines?
Yes, but also if I feel any resentment towards doing it, I'm not going to do a good job, right? If I
Yeah, yeah,
feel,
but that's why it's a conversation when they
yeah,
ask you.
yeah, this which is a good thing why he asked me, right? So I like the fact that he still asked me.
Mm,
Um, but there are some managers that just put you in and voluntold you that you're gonna be doing whatever job, whether you like it or not.
yeah.
And I don't think that's a good way to be.
Being a manager though is
It's difficult. It's
it's
not easy,
difficult. It's
It's
not
not
it's not
easy.
easy. It's not easy. And this is the thing. Before I was in that managerial role, I'd cuss off my managers all the time. Like, how can you not know this and this? You're dread, you don't know nothing, you're the worst, blah blah. Then I had that role and I was like, shit, this is hard.
Mm,
Because you're dealing with people in your team who are wildly different.
yeah.
Like, it's funny, people I don't know, it sounds silly to say, but people are different.
Mm,
But people are, when you have a team of like four or three, wildly different.
yeah.
How they work, what they will say to you in the one-to-ones, their
Yeah.
ambitions, their objectives,
Yeah.
how they communicate with you, wildly different. So when you're trying to manage people,
Mm,
challenging. Then you're trying to manage the work, challenging. Then you're getting pressures from either your manager or from like the client, challenging. And then amongst all of this stuff, you still have to think about their objectives, their well-being, making sure that you're speaking to them in the right way, because
mm.
sometimes these people will get on your last nerves and you want to cuss them out. And you have to remind yourself, I mean, this is regardless of whether it's like whether you're in a manager role or not, just in general, people at work, you might want to cuss them out. You have to remind yourself that you can't cuss out people at work. I was, in fact, I was um last week, in fact, I was speaking to people in a team that I run. I'm not even going to name the team. In a team that I run, I wanted to cuss out certain people. They were pissing me off that day. I was having a bad day as well, admittedly. But the thing that they were saying was pissing me off. And I had
Mm.
to just step myself back and remind myself that I could not tell these people to shut up when I'm talking to them
I've had
because
managers say things
we're
like
in
that.
work and I can't talk to you like that.
Mm. I've had managers say things like that.
To you.
Not necessarily to me, but also to people in the team or whatever. Just
Tell them to shut up.
shut up or
I get it
silence you.
because sometimes, but do you know what? I get it because sometimes you're in a team, whatever, and you've got a direction, targets you have to hit, and someone else in the team was given their 5 pence worth of information
Mm,
that is not relevant, that is going to add to the workload,
mm,
something that they're not going to themselves willing to pick up.
mm,
So they're giving in extra suggestions, and you're looking at them like, and who's going to do that? What, Muggins over here? Me?
mm,
You're like, shut up! Your opinions are just not valid.
mm.
But you can't tell people that because apparently that's wrong.
It is wrong.
It is wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong. You can't tell people that their opinions aren't valid. That's not fair.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say, it's just a hard balance sometimes.
Yeah. We should have an episode on this because the managing part is difficult,
It's
right?
difficult. It's difficult.
It's
But do
not
not get me
easy.
wrong. Just because it's
But there
difficult,
are ways to cope and
as
ways to do it
yeah,
better, right?
just because it's difficult doesn't mean that then it doesn't mean it's okay to have a bad manager.
That's right. Yeah.
It's on them to improve
Yeah.
on their style and themselves.
Yeah.
Let me just caveat that because I feel like I've just condoned bad behaviors. I don't mean to do that.
No, 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 no.
We're not here for that.
And a lot of the time when you talk about the kind of scenario that you're talking about, it's the manager or the person allowing stress or the intensity of the situation to get to them,
Yeah, agreed.
and that
It
that
overflows.
overflows, and then people obviously a lot of people don't feel comfortable to like admit that they did wrong, because if you admit it, then now you're in hot water because you've now admitted it,
Yeah.
and it's a slippery slope. But yeah, either way, um, whether you're the manager or you're not the manager, this episode today is about speaking up for yourself.
Yeah.
And and if you are voluntold to do something, then try not to be silenced. Try to speak up about it. I think sometimes it's difficult, like in the times where they do it in front of very senior leadership, and you're like, oh, I guess I'm doing that now, without even speaking to you. That's difficult.
But do you know, this kind of comes on to another point that we had made a note of, is to demand ways of working that works for you.
Mm,
And I think the way I'm going to link these two together is, if your manager does do something like that, being able to have a conversation with them to explain that that was not okay, you didn't appreciate that, and kind of go on from there. But that can only be done if you have that ways of working set up that includes giving feedback and being honest with the feedback that you give.
mm.
And I appreciate that not all companies have a culture where that reciprocal feedback is encouraged. But for everybody listening, I would highly recommend that when you are working with somebody, especially someone like your manager, you make it really clear to them that I want us to have a two-way feedback relationship,
Right. That's good.
where, I can give you feedback, you can give me feedback, and also discuss how you'd like to receive that feedback as well. I did the same thing with my client when I joined this recent project. I said to her, I don't want to, if you've got a problem with me or what I do, I prefer you to tell me to my face first and not go and escalate it to somebody, my account lead or whatever. Like, we are
Mm,
adults and we should be able to have a conversation about this stuff.
yeah.
So I would encourage everybody on the call to have that, to speak to their manager like that, because ultimately you're all adults, and you need to be able to kind of have difficult conversations with people.
Yeah.
Though
I
I
think
appreciate that that is hard, because I have been in a company culture where that is not the done thing.
the thing with ways of working is that a huge part of it is communication.
Mm,
It's all about communicating with the manager. So all this silence, volunteer, voluntold is actually more about communication than it is anything else. One of the key ways to avoid these issues and having to speak up for yourself after the fact is having regular one-to-one sessions with your manager, with whoever's the person that tells you what to do. Um,
do you think
so
people do that?
I don't think people do that. I mean, some people do, but I don't think the majority of people do that.
Why not? Do you think it's because it's not a company culture thing?
Yeah, maybe it's not a company culture, and I think whether it's company culture or not, you can still talk. You can still say, let's have regular meetings. And I guess if they reject it, then they reject it. But I don't know any manager that would reject that. I think
No.
it's a bit weird for any manager to reject
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Even the shit ones.
Yeah. So, and then in those sessions, regular communication to understand what's my point of view, what's your point of view. I've learned a lot about my manager through one-to-one sessions and understanding his point of view. He fully understands my point of view. We both know where we stand, right? Um, whether that's on opposite sides of the wall or the same side of the wall, right? It doesn't even matter, right?
Mm,
Whether it's opposite sides or the same side, at least you know where you stand. And then when it comes to these issues like being given work that's not in your interests or been told to do things that are not in your interests, then you've had that conversation. He already knows where you stand, right? So he's not going to give you that work because he knows that's not in your interest
mm.
because you've already expressed that. You've already expressed your career direction to him,
Yeah.
what things you want to work on. You already expressed how you expect the team or the project to work,
Mm,
and you've already expressed how you want to work, right?
yeah.
So whether that's working flexibly, whether that's like I'm logging off at 5 and you're not going to see me after that, whether it's like um, you might see me, I might leave at 3 o'clock and then come back later. That's more than one conversation.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, that's
'Cause-
not just like, oh, by the way, manager, I leave at 3 and then I log on at 7, I work till 9. That is not a single conversation. That is a regular cadence, keeping up every week. Oh, yeah, so I left at 3 this week. I came back at 7. This is what I did after 7. Um, that flexible working helped because of this. Build that relationship because
yeah.
at the end of the day, you're working with people, and that
And people
people
like
relationship
people.
is important.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think you said that. You nailed it spot on. And I think for people who are early on in their career, it feels quite daunting to be like, oh, I'm going to have a weekly catch up with my manager. What are we going to talk about? Da, da, da.
Mm.
But I think even just to be like, you set an agenda before the meeting to say, okay, this is, when you're in the early stages, be like, okay, these are things we want to cover. I want to talk about what can I do to push myself more? What do you expect to see from somebody who is a grade higher than me? What is it that you want to see? Because I tell you what ends up happening is that you've not had these one-to-one little catch-ups. Because what they really are is exactly what you said, to reinforce your ways of working, to build a rapport with somebody, but it's also to get regular feedback. But what ends up happening if you don't have those one-to-ones is nothing gets said, nothing gets said, nothing gets
The
said. And
resentment.
then yeah, it all builds up. You don't like
Yeah.
that manager don't like you.
Yeah.
Your yearly reviews comes along and they're like, these are all the things you need to work on,
Oh yeah.
and you're like, what? Because you haven't, as you said before, you haven't communicated, but also you haven't taken charge of your career
Mm.
and taken control of what needs to happen.
Mm.
You just let it happen to you. And I've been victim of this before. I've just let things happen to me and just like go with the wind or whatever. And I've really, really regret doing that in the early stages of my career. Because I feel like if I had regular catch ups with my manager, then we could have spoken about what do I need to do to improve? What do you need to see from me? Da, 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 da.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, there are some managers in the past that he and I would have never been on the
Yeah.
same. It doesn't matter how many times
Mm,
we talk, we're not gonna be on the same side of the wall. But if we did talk, there are probably some things that could have been avoided. I could have
mm,
probably been silenced less. I could have been voluntold less. I
mm.
could have not been drowned in feedback at the end when it comes to review and oh, how did you do? And the review is just absolutely terrible
Terrible.
because he and I are on the opposite side of it. If we had regular feedback, I'm not saying the feedback won't be bad, but at least you would have seen it coming because it would
But
have
you,
been communicated on a weekly basis, and you would have said. Sometimes you have to be clear with your manager, right? They'll say to you, um, if you want good feedback, you have to do A, right? And sometimes you have to be clear to your manager and say, it doesn't matter what I'll do, I'm not going to do A, right? So let's find another way
yeah.
because I'm not going to do A.
And you're right there. There's two things that you said. Um, with the regular feedback, when you get the regular feedback, it gives you an opportunity to work on it, to
Mm,
improve. If they're saying to you, you're not asking enough questions or your assignments always, I don't know, whatever it is, you've got a chance to ask more questions for your assignments to be there on time, for you to do whatever it is you need to do. And secondly, the point you made around, oh, if they say you need to do B as part of your feedback and you said to your manager, oh no, I don't want to do B, it's such a good point because just because someone's giving you feedback doesn't mean you have to take it.
yeah.
I have learnt that. I have had people work for me, like I have been their lead, and they have told me X and X, and I've just been like, nah, I'm just not accepting that as feedback because I just don't think that is true,
Mm,
basically. On the flip side, I've had feedback, like critical feedback, and been like, yeah, fair. I think that was accurate.
mm, yeah.
But then again, it's for you to have a conversation with your manager and say, you know, you've given me this feedback, but actually, this is not something that I feel like I'm gonna take on right now.
Mm,
And something that, I mean, I don't know if this works. I've never had a toxic manager and use this towards them before. But somebody has said to me, if you're working with somebody who's challenging, talk about feelings.
mm-hmm,
So say to them, last week when we had this conversation, you said X and it made me feel like Y. It made me feel not good about myself.
right.
And apparently, again, I've never tried it, but apparently he said in his experience, it changes the conversation because nobody really wants to make somebody feel bad. But he said that's another way to kind of get your point across. And another thing that somebody has said, and again, I haven't used this, is if the conversation is going Sometimes these managers are trash. If you can't have a conversation with your manager and you end up yelling or shouting, or the conversation is not productive, instead of you feeling like you need to continue the conversation, just say, I'm going to end the conversation right here. I feel like neither of us are in the in the headspace right now to continue having this conversation. I'm going to end it right here, and we can catch up later on, because the
Yeah.
conversation is not going anywhere, and you're both being like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's just you're both button heads.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as well, when you do have these conversations, it's important to be honest with yourself
Yeah.
and not allow ego or your
Mm.
feelings to get in the way.
How
Um,
hard is that?
it can be difficult for some people, for sure. Um,
But I feel like I feel like that's really hard. Could you have to really like be able to reflect and be like, rah, maybe I could have done that differently, or maybe like, yeah, what they were saying was true. Do not get your ego in the way.
I think ego can come in the way a lot of times. But you gotta try. You gotta try. But the whole idea of this ways of working and making it work for you is preventing the need for you to have to speak up for yourself after the fact, right? And
Mm.
preventing you being silent or being silenced when, because you've had these pre-conversations, you've built a rapport. Even if it's a bad rapport, they still know where you stand. So um, it will help you in whatever you're trying to do, right? um, I'm not gonna lie, it's not always gonna work. If you have a bad relationship with your manager, um, they could still told you, and they can still silence you, and because they're a bad manager. You know, I think there's more bad managers out there than there are good. To be honest, I would not.
Yeah, I think so
I
too.
think I definitely think that. But yeah, that's the way it is, really. Any other thoughts?
Just to do the ways of working with your manager and with your team, I think it's so, so important. I think it can cut out a lot of bullshit,
Mm,
and it can cut out a lot of assumptions on how people feel or how they act if you just have a conversation and act like adults.
mm,
That being said, you said not all managers can act like adults. Some of them act like children, or some of
100%,
your
yeah.
people that you work with, they act like children. But
Mm,
if you have other people who are in the same kind of mindset as you and want to be better, I think that ways of working really helps.
mm,
And you know what it also helps do with your manager? It can help them to be an advocate for you as well. Because
yeah,
if they're not close to your work and you're there telling them every week the things that you do, they can actually start advocating for you on your
yeah.
behalf. And that can represent you better for promotions or pay rise, whatever.
Oh
Because
yeah,
they've
oh
got better
definitely.
visibility of what you do.
Yeah, the
And you can
one-to-ones help
kind
with
of
that a lot.
spin I don't want to say spin the story, because it's not necessarily saying that you're lying, but you can tell them, you can shape the narrative.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you can also, sometimes, yeah, I'm not gonna go there too deep, but sometimes you got to play some mind games,
Mm,
right? And your one-to-ones are an opportunity to do that
yeah,
sometimes, right?
yeah.
I'm just gonna put that out there. Take that as you
Take
will.
take it as you will. Take it as you will. As Megan said, that seems like, what did she say in the interview? She was like, that seems like a good conclusion that you just made. If that's a conclusion if that's a conclusion that you've come to,
Yeah.
then that seems like a fair one.
Mm,
I think that's what she said.
yeah. Okay. And we want to say to our listeners, thank you for listening to us for our first season in the Ordinary Black Professionals podcast. This episode is the season finale, episode 20. So we've got 20 episodes for you guys to enjoy. And we will be back for season 2. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram to see when we'll be back. And whilst we're away, please do share this podcast with your friends and family. Let people know your favorite episodes. Ping us your favorite episodes. We're more than happy to hear about it and even your experiences.
Yeah, definitely. And if there's any particular topic that you want us to discuss in season 2, let us know. We've already got some ready and on the radar that people have messaged us. So if there's any that you're interested in, please let us know. And then finally, thank you to all our guests that have been on. Thank you to Latoya. Thank you to Temi, to Delapo, to Serena. Thank you for being part of Ordinary Black Professionals, telling us about your career stories and your journeys. Thank you for all the listeners that we've had so far. We're surprised at how many listeners that we have, especially in different parts of the world as well. So we really appreciate you, and this is why we do it,
Mm.
for our fans. um so yeah, how has creating a podcast been? 20 weeks worth
Yeah,
for you, if you could summarize it in a word.
challenging. It's not easy. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
But I feel like we've got some really good episodes. We've given the people some really good information. Hopefully, they've learned some stuff
Do you have a
from
favorite
us.
episode?
Um, um, I think is it company culture is good. You know what? I really like Delapo's episode as well, and Latoya's episode is one of my favorites, and um, Imposter Syndrome.
I like Imposter Syndrome as well. I think one of my favorites is probably Temmie's and Serena.
Okay.
Probably both of my favorites. So there we kind of cover everyone. But I agree. I also like the imposter syndrome one, and maybe also Black Lives Matter
Oh yeah,
was a good one.
that's an early one. Yeah.
That was an early one. So yeah. Thank you everybody. And we won't be seeing you next week, but we will be seeing you in season 2. Thanks guys. Bye.
Bye.
If you have any questions or dilemmas, email us on ordinaryblackprofessionals@gmail.com, or we can be found on Instagram and Twitter at ordinaryblackprofessionals. Also, don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and leave a rating and comment.